The Pittsburgh Pirates may currently be one of, if not the worst team in baseball on paper. And it has been that way for a couple years now, as Pittsburgh's last winning season was back in 2018 where they won 82 games. But as bad as this team currently is, I wanted to give a quick preview of what this team is looking like and what to expect out of them this year. Now, when first looking at this team, let's look at their offense. Starting off with the catcher position, it looks like they're going to be starting Roberto Perez. Perez is by no means a great offensive catcher, but defensively he's pretty good behind the plate, so you can't really expect too much out of Perez outside of his pretty stellar defense. Now over at first base, they are most likely going to be going with Yoshi Tsutsugo, who split time between the Dodgers and Rays last year and didn't play very well. But in 144 plate appearances with Pittsburgh, he hit .268 and he has decent power. I think he could hit over 20 home runs this year if he gets good playing time. Now over at second base, they're most likely going to be rolling with Michael Chavis. Chavis is a former prospect with the Red Sox, and he since then got traded to the Pirates, and he has pretty decent power. I think he could hit 20 to 25 home runs, but he's not going to do too much outside of that. Moving over to shortstop, it looks like Pittsburgh is going to be rolling with Cole Tucker to start out the season. And to be completely honest, Tucker isn't a great player. He's really not a starting option in my opinion. But as the season goes on, I believe they will have Tucker's replacement. I believe the Pittsburgh Pirates will roll with O'Neal Cruz as the season goes on. He's a top prospect in their system right now. He's a really tall, lanky dude who seems to have a lot of talent. Cruz is clearly looking like the top option at shortstop for the long term, so I think sooner rather than later he will be up in the big leagues. Now moving over to third base, this will be most likely one of their more productive offensive hitters in Ke'Bryan Hayes. Hayes was a pretty hyped up prospect last year who was injured for most of the year and really didn't perform up to expectations when he was healthy. And the injury that did derail his season most of last year was the fact that he had a cyst in his wrist. But heading into this season, it looks like the wrist injury is behind him. You at least hope so, because that seems like a pretty painful injury. But if he is healthy this year, I think he has 20 home run, 20 stolen base potential. Now moving on to the outfield, the first outfielder we're going to be talking about today is Ben Gamel. Now when looking at Ben Gamel, to be completely honest, there's not too much to speak about. Last year he hit below .250 and had only 8 home runs. He is pretty good defensively. He makes some highlight reel plays out there, so all in all he's not the best outfielder, but he can provide you with some solid defense. Now in center field, they are going to be rolling with their best offensive player by far in Bryan Reynolds. Last year, Reynolds played in 159 games where he hit .302 with 24 home runs, 90 RBIs to go along with a .912 OPS and a 6.0 WAR. He was named to his first career All-Star team and finished 11th in the National League MVP voting. He's an all-around outstanding offensive player who is heading into his age 27 season, so right now he's in the middle of his prime, and I could really see him replicating what he did last year. Now in terms of defense, Reynolds isn't the best. He had a -4 defensive run saved last year, so he's a little bit below average, but there is still room for growth. But when you provide as much as Reynolds does offensively, defense isn't all that important. And looking at the final outfield spot for Pittsburgh, we have Anthony Alford. Alford is similar to Ben Gamel in the sense that there is not too much to talk about with him here. He's not going to hit for the best average in the world. Last year he hit about .240. One thing he can do is provide you with double-digit home runs and double-digit stolen bases, but I'm not talking 2020. This guy is probably going to provide you with 10 home runs and 10 stolen bases at best. And finally, getting on to the newly implemented DH position for the National League, the Pirates are most likely going to be rolling with Daniel Vogelbach. Now for Vogelbach, he's been a pretty atrocious player throughout his career, except for 2019 where he played with Seattle. In that season, he hit .208 with 30 home runs and 76 RBIs and was named to his first career All-Star team. And if Vogelbach is healthy and gets the appropriate playing time, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that he could hit close to 30 home runs. Now, I don't think he's going to be an all-star caliber player. He's probably going to hit close to 200 with those 30 home runs, but 30 home runs at the DH position for Pittsburgh is a big plus. So all in all, offensively, Pittsburgh is not great. They have a few bright spots in Bryan Reynolds, Ke'Bryan Hayes, and O'Neal Cruz, but outside of that, there's not too much going on here. Now, moving over to the starting rotation, this is where things get even worse. Their so-called ace at the moment is David Bednar, who did pitch to a 2.23 ERA last year, but prior to last year has never provided any consistent play throughout his career. They also have JT Brubacher, who last year pitched to a 5.36 ERA. Now for Brubacher, sorry, I'm not too sure how to pronounce it. Anyways, he's a okay pitcher. He's shown some promise in the past to be a decent pitcher, but last year he was a train wreck, and I'm not too sure what to expect out of him in 2022. They also have Jose Quintana, who at one time was a very good pitcher, but over the past couple years he has been far from great. Last year he pitched to a 6.43 ERA, and you really can't expect anything out of Quintana. They also have Zach Thompson, who pitched to a 3.24 ERA last year. This is one pitcher that I am a little bit intrigued by. I think he could have an ERA around 4 and potentially be Pittsburgh's best option. And a few other starting options for Pittsburgh is Chris Stratton, who last year had a 3.63 ERA, and Mitch Keller, who was a former top prospect in Pittsburgh's system but hasn't put it together in the big leagues up to this point. Now in terms of their bullpen, it actually looks like David Bednar, who I mentioned earlier, could be an option to close out some games for Pittsburgh. Last year, Bednar was in the long relief role, and he performed very well. As I mentioned before, he had a 2.23 ERA. But outside of Bednar, there is very limited options. They have a couple names like Will Crow, Heath Hembry, Sam Howard, Dylan Peters, and Bryce Wilson. So for the starting rotation and the bullpen, it is not great at all. I don't think they have too much options here at all. And as a team, Pittsburgh really doesn't have many options either. They have Brian Reynolds, who is a legitimate star in my opinion. He's really the only standout player from this team that I could see being an all-star this year. As for Pittsburgh's record, I could see them again losing close to 100 games this year. I do think they're going to be pretty fun to watch with Ke'Bryan Hayes and O'Neal Cruz and, of course, Brian Reynolds. And they could win a couple games against teams like the Cubs and Reds, who don't have too great of rosters themselves. But I think it's far-fetched to say this team is even going to be close to competing this year. They're just simply not a good team at this point in time. So yes, I know Pittsburgh is going to be pretty bad this year, but I wanted to give some thoughts on them as a whole because I think they're going to be pretty fun to watch. I can't wait to watch Brian Reynolds this year. He's one of the more underrated players in the game today, most likely because he plays for Pittsburgh, but he is a very good player. I'm also super excited to see O'Neal Cruz and see what he can do for Pittsburgh over at shortstop and, of course, at the plate. So no, Pittsburgh is most likely not going to compete this year. Like I said before, I think they're going to probably lose close to 100 games yet again, but I think they're going to be pretty fun to watch. But anyways, that's going to wrap today's video up. Let me know what you guys think of Pittsburgh down below. And as always, if you guys do enjoy the content, feel free to subscribe. I'm going to continue to post a lot more videos here as we head closer to 2022. And lastly, I want to thank you guys again so much for watching and continuing to support, and I'll see you next time.